The Tennessee Titans culture change is here. And not only can we see it, but we're hearing it from the players as well. I'll tell you what they're saying on today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. On today's show, we are seeing a culture change for the Tennessee Titans that we desperately wanted to see, and we're also hearing it from a few key players as well. I'll tell you what the players are saying about the new coaching staff and the new vibes in the locker room. Also, I think there could be some surprise starters on offense and defense this year. I'll tell you who I think they are. Before we get into all of it, I do want to thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. You're not going to beat that anywhere else. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. Speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. Got some great content coming up next week. Tennessee Titans minicamp is right around the corner, so we're going to be diving into that very, very soon. Don't miss it. Again, I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Nearly 25 years as a Tennessee Titans fanatic. I've covered the team here for the Locked On Titans podcast for 5 seasons. I've covered the team for Sports Illustrated, USA Today, breaking down the X's and O's with you guys all year long. But with that being said, the culture changes here. So let's get it. Number one, we heard from Chig Okonkwo, Tennessee Titans tight end, and I wasn't really surprised to hear what we heard from Chig Okonkwo, but, you know, it's still nice to hear. You figured that that was the case, but it's great to hear someone actually put the words out there. And coming from the previous regime, it's just an incredible breath of fresh air. So Chig Okonkwo said this, quote, "I feel guys are just more relaxed now with our building. I feel like guys come in and they're not as tense, not as stressed out, and it allows people to be a lot more free in the locker room. I mean, we were always free in the locker room, but there's a lot more freedom on the field. I think we're going to see a lot of that this year." He was asked to give an example. He said, quote, "I feel like just coming in and being yourself, not feeling like you need to minimize yourself and what you're doing, just coming in and fully being you." He said, "It's just different cultures. Right now, we're seeing a new culture. The way that we do things is a lot more on us players to get going. I feel like us having ownership of that has been a big thing to help us be more free," end quote. Of course, quote comes courtesy of TennesseeTitans.com, but that shows it right there. We already had an idea that Mike Vrabel was a bit of a manager, and we knew that Mike Vrabel was a guy who was very harsh, gave the players tons of tongue lashings after games, looking at the film. He was just really on every single person all the time. And when you're in an environment like that, I've worked in environments like that where I had bosses that are just breathing down your neck all the time and have nothing to say but negativity. You guys, in your experiences, have probably had bosses or teachers who just feel like that, and you just feel put in a box. Okay, I continue to say Mike Vrabel is a good coach, but Mike Vrabel was not the right coach for this Tennessee Titans team. And I think we're hearing from some of these players now, and the Chig Okonkwo quotes may not even be the most damning of the quotes that we hear, because Arden Key on the defensive side of the ball had something to say that I think was even more of a referendum on the previous coaching staff. And this comes courtesy of Paul Kaharski. He took the video at practice on Wednesday. But Arden Key said, when talking about the differences between last year's defense and this year's defense under Denard Wilson, said, quote, "The intensity Denard Wilson got, the detail, we don't move on until everything is fixed. And the detail he got," Denard Wilson, of course, "the swag he got that he comes in with every day, man, it's going to be exciting." And Paul kind of pressed him a little bit for more info and asked if the previous defense would just move on before they fix things. And he said, heck yeah. Yes, we moved on. If we messed up, we didn't fix it. And now this year, when we mess up, we don't move on until we fix it. I mean, you hate to do the thing where any compliment that these guys give to the new coaching staff, you turn into a shot at the previous coaching staff. But I mean, at this point, how could you not? Chikakonkwo talking about being way more free and feeling like he can be himself. And then Arden Key talking about they didn't even fix their mistakes last year. They just kept going. They just kept moving on. All right, that is damning stuff to put on the previous coaching staff. The culture wasn't good. Players didn't feel they could be themselves. The defense would just fly through stuff without correcting it and fixing it in real time. You know, those are issues. Those are major issues. And not only that, but we heard from Tennessee Titans quarterback Will Levis, who at the end of the day is the straw that stirs this drink. And it was from an article with Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated. And Levis says this. It's a great article. I encourage you to go read it. Great deep dive with Callahan and Levis. But Levis says this. It's the first time in my career where I felt comfortable going to a coach and suggesting something because I feel like I'm comfortable enough with the offense to where I know the machinations of it. That right there, this is the first time in my career where I felt comfortable going to a coach and suggesting something. Like, what kind of environment are we in where the players aren't comfortable doing something like that? And Brian Callahan talked about that. I think it was on the podcast that he did with The Athletic, with Danny Kelly, or it might have been Bussin' with the Boys. But he's talking about creating an environment where the players feel as much a part of it as the coaches. You could tell that in the past, Mike Vrabel's do what we tell you. Don't ask why. Do what we tell you. This is what we need to do. Not an environment where people feel comfortable. That is what is being described by the players here. So to hear about this new culture where guys feel more free, they can give their own suggestions, they're more a part of the plan. And going back to what Chick said, he said it creates ownership. When the players feel more intimately involved in the process, they feel like they own the results more. They are part of it more. And that only creates a level of accountability that is healthy. All right. So we figured that there would be a brand new culture going from a demeaning guy like Mike Vrabel to an uplifting, cooperative guy like Brian Callahan. And not only are we seeing it, but we're hearing it from the players, and it feels as good as we thought it would feel when Brian Callahan was hired, and we expected to see all of this. So fantastic stuff. Again, shots at Mike Vrabel. There's no doubt about it. There's no way to act like the things that we heard there are not shots at Mike Vrabel. Maybe indirectly, but they definitely are. But either way, he's an assistant in Cleveland now. And the Titans are moving forward with a better culture, a more cooperative culture, and that is exactly what they needed to do. Now, I want to talk about some surprise starters on offense and defense, and I'm going to tell you why. I think Josh Whyle might be tight end 1. Crazy? I know. I'll explain. Before I do, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. They have superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, stuff I've never even heard of. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We just talked about the brand new vibes in the building for the Titans and how the culture is already different under Brian Callahan. Now I want to talk about some surprise starters, okay? Because there are some guys on the roster right now who I think could end up being starters on day one that maybe people aren't expecting as much. It wouldn't be an outright shock maybe, but people aren't expecting it. And before we get into that, I do want to thank you again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed to the Locked On Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. But looking at tight end, I know we talk about Chigga, and I love Chigga. I was banging on the table for Chigga to get drafted to the Titans. I thought it was a perfect fit. I thought he could be Jonnu 2.0, and I still think that he can. But what we have to come to grips with, Chigga is never going to be a traditional inline tight end. He's never going to be your standard Y tight end with his hand in the dirt next to the offensive lineman, helping double team big defensive ends and set the edge in the run game and create a lane. Like, that is just not what Chigga is meant to do. It doesn't suit his body style. He's 6'2", 240 some. He's a speed tight end. He's a move tight end. That's what the term would be. H-back, move tight end. He's not your traditional inline tight end. He's just simply not. Okay? And Chick said in his press conference recently that it's better for him that they're going to pass more because it fits him better than the run-first style that the Titans had before. And he's saying it right out in the open, okay? He's saying the quiet part out loud for you. He is just never going to be a great run blocker, okay? He's never, and that doesn't mean that he can't be an incredible weapon within the Titans' offense. He absolutely can as a secondary tight end. But what the Titans need is that wide tight end, that hand in the dirt, that next to the offensive tackle, ready to pull off a double team. That's what they need for their base 3 wide receiver group. Okay, you can't have 3 wide receivers and then Chigga is your inline tight end on run plays. Like, that's just going to be too difficult to overcome. Okay? So, with that being said, it may be a surprise to people, but Josh Whyle, the second-year player out of Cincinnati, 6'6", 250 pounds. Josh Whyle has put on weight, according to the coaches, earlier in the offseason. He's gained muscle, and he looks a little bit bigger. He really does. And we've seen from the very minimal, Mike Vrabel is gone, but the media mafia of the Tennessee Titans continues. The very minimal stuff that the Titans have put out about OTAs, the videos and stuff, we've seen Josh Whyle already making a couple of catches, couple videos, couple pictures, where it's Whyle catching passes from Will Levis. Josh Whyle has the size. And look, Nick Vannett was signed as tight end 3. He is more of that traditional wide tight end, hand in the dirt type guy. So maybe he finds a way to leapfrog up and be a better Jeff Swaim, a better Trevon Wesco this year with a little bit more passing chops at the end of the day. That's more important. But I think Josh Whyle truly has a chance to be like tight end 1, like the starting tight end. Wiley's out there all the time, plays the most snaps, and then Chigga is the secondary tight end who can be that move guy, who can be used as a weapon. You know what I mean? Put him in the slot even. That would be helpful. If you have Chigga in the slot, and then Josh Whyle at traditional tight end, you can motion Chigga into the formation, and now you have 2 tight ends in there. Like, there are creative ways that you can use Chigga, but I think that there is a chance here that Josh Whyle ends up being the number 1 tight end, the starting tight end. Like, I think his body type and the improvements that he's made with his body, I think that is something that could absolutely happen. Am I guaranteeing that? No, but the conversation needs to be had at some point that it is a possibility, and it would be a logical option as well. Okay? So, moving forward on the offensive side of the ball, away from tight end, we've talked about it, but I want to mention it again. Sadiq Charles at right guard. So Brunskill, just a tick over 300 pounds, more of a pass protector. Sadiq Charles, well, I wouldn't say pass protector is true, but more of a finesse player. Sadiq Charles, 320 pounds, and is a power player. At his best, Sadiq Charles is a mauler, okay? And based on what we've seen, the pick of J.C. Latham, trading for Leroy Watson, signing Sadiq Charles, Skoronski adding a bunch of weight and looking way bigger, Dylan Radin's adding weight and looking way bigger. It looks like the Titans are much more focused on powerful offensive linemen with size, okay? Away from maybe the more agile player that the previous Titans regime was looking for in their zone offense. If the Titans truly do want more power, I don't think that Daniel Brunskill is such a good player that he can't be jumped by Sadiq Charles if he has a really good offseason. I don't think that Dylan Radins is as high on the coaching staff's mind as he is mine. So I think there is a real chance here that Sadiq Charles could come out and go from right guard 3, jump all the way to right guard 1. Like, I think that could happen depending on how well he plays here in the OTAs. It's going to be very important for him to take advantage of that into the mandatory mini camp, and then, of course, into training camp as well. So it would be a bit of a surprise. Wouldn't be an outright shock, but we could see Sadiq Charles as the right guard. Here is one that I wanted to hit on. Dylan Radins at right tackle. So I've talked about Dylan Radins. I think he should be the right guard for this team. I think he should be the starter. I think he's earned the opportunity to start out there and to stay there and to work there. But here's what I will say. If the Titans don't go out and sign a free agent and Nicholas Petit-Ferrer continues to rehab his shoulder injury and not be on the field, Jalen Duncan isn't on the field. I wouldn't want him there anyway. At some point, the best right tackle on the team is Dylan Radins. Like, I talked about it earlier this week when I mentioned his stats and why that he should get the opportunity at right guard. He was maybe the Titans' best offensive lineman in the last 5 games of the year. Gave up 1 sack, was very consistent. Needs to clean up the penalties, of course. That absolutely has to happen. A lot of it was like false start stuff. But if the Titans don't sign someone before training camp and MPF isn't healed, like, it's Leroy Watson, a converted tight end, or Dylan Radins. At some point, you have to give him a look there. So I think it would be a surprise if that happened. But at some point, the Titans may be put in a corner where they have no other option. And that's just what they need to do, you know? Especially if Sadiq Charles is winning the right guard competition. Again, I'd like to see Dylan Radins at right guard, stay at right guard, give him the opportunity there. I think that's his long-term home for the NFL. But at some point, you got to play the best 5. And if MPF isn't healthy, you need to start building that cohesiveness, building that chemistry. Put Dylan Radins back at right tackle, and let's see what happens. Like, I don't think that is the number one outcome that I'm looking for, but at some point the question has to be asked if MPF isn't going to be healthy. Because at the end of the day, Leroy Watson is a converted tight end that they traded a 7th-round pick for. Is he a starter? Should he be handed a starter spot? Let Radins compete there too. I'll just never give up on Dylan Radins. Dumb, stupid, I don't care what you call it. It is what it is. But with that being said, let's talk about the defensive side of the ball. Titans fans, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We've talked about the new culture and how we're hearing from the players about it. We've talked about some surprise starters on the offensive side of the ball. Josh Whyle, Sadiq Charles, maybe Dylan Radins at right tackle at this point. Who knows? But now I want to talk about defense. Before I do, though, I do want to thank you again for making Locked On Titans your first to listen each and every day. Also want to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. It's on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. It's called Locked On Sports Today. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day. You get coverage of every league from all of our national shows, like Locked On NFL, which I'm on Thursdays. You guys should check that out. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Before I dive into defense, do want to ask you guys, throw your comments down below if you're watching on YouTube. Let me know whether you think any of those surprise starters can actually win the spot. Let me know who you would prefer at those spots if you don't like what I had to say, of course. But with that being said, defense. Elijah Molden. So we want the Titans to sign a safety. I think that's pretty unanimous. Marcus May, Justin Simmons, even Quandre Diggs. We're all hoping that the Titans sign a safety because we don't really feel confident in the safety group right now outside of Amani Hooker. But what if they don't? What if they don't? What if they can't come to terms with any of those guys? What if Elijah Molden is better suited for this attacking defense? I think it would make more sense for Elijah Molden and his style of play. I think it fits better with the way that he plays football. He wants to come forward. He wants to be aggressive. He has great physicality as well. So what if Elijah Molden is doing great in OTAs, looks good in the mandatory minicamp in the beginning of June, and the Titans are like, you know what? Rather than going out and giving funny money to one of these older safeties who clearly doesn't want to commit to us yet, what if we just rock with Elijah Molden? I think it would be a dangerous game. I don't think they should. But, again, me saying I don't think they should do that is fully based off what I saw from Elijah Molden last year. So, if Molden is much improved, if he's healthy, if he understands the defense, if he's better in the role that he's in now, maybe they just rock with Elijah Molden next to Amani Hooker. I think there was a time where we hoped that would be the case. Last year, around this time, I was doing shows talking about how the Titans are grooming Elijah Molden to take over for Kevin Byard. That a trade of Kevin Byard or releasing Kevin Byard after the year is probably coming. And the Titans need to groom Elijah Molden when they transition him to safety and get him to be that replacement. Now, I don't have faith because of what we saw from Elijah Molden on tape last year, but that was the plan. So maybe the plan just works out. Maybe Elijah Molden steps up and makes that happen. He could be a surprise starter for this defense. Also, Rashad Weaver, another guy in the same draft class who was minimized last year after 5.5 sacks the year before that. The Titans need to sign an edge, right? We want Carl Lawson, Emmanuel Ogbah. I mean, some people want Yannick Ngakoue, although I don't think that makes sense with the role that the Titans need. Another edge rusher is what everyone's hoping for with safety. Well, maybe Rashad Weaver steps up. He looks slimmed down. He looks in better shape. Maybe in this defense, maybe he shows the physicality to play on early downs and the discipline to not rush too far upfield. Maybe he's gotten better. See, that's the thing is, we want results right away from these guys. But some guys don't blossom until a few years in, until they understand what's needed of them, until they're in a system that fits them better. They're getting better individual coaching at their position. All of those things matter. Some guys are late bloomers when it comes to their NFL career. It does happen. So if Rashad Weaver can do that and step up, maybe he can take that starting edge spot across from Harold Landry, and then Arden Key can be that mixed-in guy. Brian Callahan was asked about Arden Key being a 3-down player at his press conference on Wednesday, and you can just tell he doesn't believe in it. They called him a rotational guy earlier in the offseason. They're saying, hey, the pads aren't on. We'll see when the pads are on. They know Arden Key is not physical enough to be an every down linebacker. He's just not. He's not going to set the edge. He's not going to create that wall against the run. It's just not his game. He's thin. He's tall. He's long. He is a rotational pass rusher. That's what he does best. And there's no shame in that for $7 million. But Weaver is a more physically built guy. So maybe he can step in and do that job. You know what I mean? Maybe the answers we got to look within, to get all spiritual on you guys. But the last name that I want to mention here is my guy, Jack Gibbons. So I know that we're all excited about Cedric Gray, and I think Kenneth Murray probably has a great shot to be one of the starters. But maybe Cedric Gray isn't ready right away. Maybe they want to use Cedric Gray in more of a third down, passing down role, like a Jayon Brown early in his career. Maybe they want to get his feet wet in that way rather than be a day one, 3 down, every snap starter. Jack Gibbons, while being limited athletically, still is incredibly intelligent and incredibly physical. He's going to know the defense. He's going to get other people lined up. He's going to know his responsibility. He's always going to be in the spot that you expect him to be in. And he's going to, again, play with physicality. And on early downs, that's very, very important. So I don't expect Jack Gibbons to be out there on third downs and passing situations. That would be mismanagement. But Titans defense rolls out there week 1. First snap. I don't think you guys should be surprised to see Jack Gibbons as your day 1 starter. I still hope that it's Cedric Gray. I hope he steps up and does what it takes to take the spot. But I'm just saying, don't be shocked because there is a chance. But with that being said, that is going to do it for me today, folks. That's going to do it for this week of the Locked On Titans podcast. Again, part of the Locked On podcast. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back with you guys on Sunday night on YouTube, Monday morning for my audio, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.